The Hulu original series, Furious, is coming to Hulu and Hulu on Disney Plus July 27th.
There are 3 victims we know of. The suspect is female, white, late 20s.
Female serial killer.
Kill for power, control. I believe there's a deeper motivation here.
You have no idea who you're dealing with, and you are going to end up dead.
I've been waiting for you.
Watch the Hulu original series, Furious, on July 27th. Streaming on Hulu and Hulu on Disney Plus for bundle subscribers. Terms apply.
Amazon Health AI presents Painful Thoughts.
I can't stop scratching my downtown. Yeah, but I'm not itching to go downtown and tell a receptionist I'm here to talk about my downtown. Some things you'd rather type than say out loud.
There's no question too embarrassing for Amazon Health AI. Chat your symptoms and get virtual care 24/7. Healthcare just got less painful.
Welcome back, True Crime Army. I am your host, Margot, and this is Military Murder, a show where I discuss true crime cases involving military members and veterans. And today, I am taking us back into the late 1980s. I'm not sure who recommended this case to me recently, but as soon as I read one of the appellate opinions, I couldn't believe what I was reading. With that, thank you to everyone who keeps sending me case recommendations. Sometimes I feel like I've heard them all, and then I realize you can never run out of ways to be crazier than the next person. I do have a trigger warning for today's episode. Of course, all of my cases involve murder, but today's case also involves rape. With that in mind, please listen with care. Join me today as I tell you the tragic story of Julia Ashe. Now, let's dig in.
Military murder is an independent project and is not endorsed by the Department of Defense or any military component. The views expressed are those of the host. The content of this podcast is not meant to be legal or medical advice. Warning, this episode contains graphic details of murder and is not suitable for young listeners. Listener discretion is advised.
On a cold December day in 1989, Bonita Casertino was doing some holiday shopping at Bradley's Shopping Center in Waterbury, Connecticut. When she was done with her shopping, she went back out to her car, only to find out that one of her tires was flat. What a bummer. As she looked at the tire, a man in his late 20s noticed what was happening and offered to help her put the spare tire on. Bonita didn't know the man, but just as he was talking to her, someone that Bonita knew was passing by, and that person offered to lend a hand. The would-be Good Samaritan left, and Bonita's friend changed her tire for her, and she headed home. The following day, Saturday, December 16th, another Waterbury resident named Susan Romello went to Bradley's to shop. When she came outside and walked up to her car, she noticed she had a flat tire. As she stared at her flat tire, trying to figure out what to do, a man in his late 20s offered to change her tire for her. Susan declined the offer for help because she lived nearby and her dad was going to help her. The would-be Good Samaritan left and Susan's dad soon arrived. But her dad noticed something weird as he was inspecting the flat tire. The valve cap was missing from the flat tire. He wondered if the flat tire was the result of someone who maliciously let the air out of her tire. Well, they didn't have to worry about that any longer. They got it fixed up and they were on their way. Later that same evening, 22-year-old Julia Ashe drove to the Naugatuck Valley Mall in Waterbury. She was there to pick up some last-minute Christmas gifts. Julia was a student at the University of Connecticut and she worked in the art department at Aetna Life and Casualty. She was carrying around $300 in cash that was tucked into a Watertown Credit Union envelope inside her wallet. Now, I do want you all to keep that detail in mind. It's going to be very, very important later. When Julia was done shopping at the mall, she drove over to Bradley's and went inside. When she came outside, guess what she discovered? Yep, you guessed it. She had a flat tire. Just as she looked on in despair, a man in his late 20s walked up and offered to help Julia change the tire. It was a bitter 18 degrees outside in Connecticut, and it was getting late, so Julia took the man up on his offer. The man worked quickly to replace the flat with the donut, and as he was doing that, he told Julia that his own car had broken down. Just as he was finishing up, he asked Julia if she would be kind enough to drive him to the gas station. I'm sure that Julia didn't want to be a Scrooge during the holiday season, so she agreed, and they got in the car and took off towards the gas station. But as soon as she left that shopping center, things turned ugly. You see, Julia didn't realize the man had orchestrated the entire encounter. He wasn't a good Samaritan. He was the reason her tire was flat to begin with. Investigators later learned that this man carried a valve stem tool that allowed him to quickly deflate a tire while its owner was inside shopping. Then, when the driver returned, he would step in and offer to help. Well, once they got in the car, the man grabbed Julia and directed her to drive to a wooded area near the Mad River off of Harper's Ferry Road next to City Mills Pond. The pond no longer exists today, but in 1989, there was a dam on the river, and that was where he had her park. The man forced Julia into the back seat of her two-door car, leaving her with no easy way to escape. As Julia sat in the back seat in complete fear, the man started going through her shopping bags and her purse, and he helped himself to that credit union envelope that was full of cash. At that point, Julia may have believed that he only wanted to rob her, but that was not the plan. The man then proceeded to do the unthinkable. He climbed into the back seat and raped and sodomized Julia. When he was done, he shoved one of her winter gloves into her mouth and covered her mouth and nose with several layers of duct tape that he brought with him. Using the tape, he also bound her hands in front of her, wrapped her ankles, and pulled her out of the car. He then picked her up and carried her to the dam next to the pond. Then he placed her on the wall and simply pushed her off the side, dropping her about 23 feet into the freezing dam. Julia landed in a foot of freezing water that was covering a concrete apron at the bottom of the dam. Remarkably, Julia survived the fall. Mind you, she's completely tied up, hands, feet, and let's not forget her mouth and nose. They're bound and gagged. Miraculously, Julia, still conscious, managed to find a roll of wire fencing sticking out of the ice nearby. Using the sharp edges of the metal, Julia sawed through the tape on her wrist, cutting herself in the process. She then got her feet free, but lost her right tennis shoe in the process. At this point, Julia was frantic, so much so that as she attempted to remove the duct tape from her nose and her mouth to get the gag out, she gouged her face with her fingernails, breaking one of her nails in the process. As Julia struggled to get the tape off, she slowly crawled out of the water, then up the rocky embankment. Julia beat the odds of surviving after falling into the water, but her luck was about to run out, because the attacker who had put her in this predicament was watching from a distance, and in his own disbelief, he realized he couldn't let this woman survive. She saw his face. So seeing that Julia was persistent, the attacker then climbed down the rocks where Julia was now attempting to crawl to safety. The man then grabbed Julia, dragged her back down into the water, where he proceeded to strangle her. Julia stood just 5'2" and weighed less than 100 pounds. Exhausted, injured, and bound only moments earlier, she stood virtually no chance against her attacker. Once Julia stopped moving, the man left her body there and ran back to her car to grab her 2 shopping bags. One bag was from a store called Lerner's, and the other was from Record Town. The killer then tossed the car keys inside and shut the trunk. He then walked back to the Bradley's shopping center parking lot, got into his own vehicle, and doubled back to the opposite side of the pond where he had left Julia in the water. The attacker parked on the shoulder of the freeway, climbed the guardrail, and threw a hole in the fence until he could see Julia's lifeless body on the opposite side where he had forced her to park. The cold-blooded killer then went back to his car and drove back to his rented room. The following morning, the killer left $250 in cash on the kitchen table to pay for his rent. Among the bills were 2 $50 bills that had been inside the credit union envelope that Julia carried the night before. The killer then returned to the shopping center and returned a pair of jeans that Julia had purchased just hours before her murder. Using a false name and address, he pocketed a cash refund of $19.19. Okay, real talk for a second. How do you and your family operate on a daily basis? Are you like me before Skylight, with a pretty planner stuffed with birthday invitations shoved into the wrong month or random thoughts scrawled all over it? Yeah, that used to be me until I got my very own digital Skylight calendar. And thank goodness, because with 3 daughters, work, school pickup, tutoring, activities, and dental appointments, my brain was basically fried. That's why the Skylight calendar has honestly been such a game changer in our house. It's this beautiful 15-inch digital smart calendar that syncs with Google Calendar, Apple Calendar, Outlook, everything. And it puts the entire family schedule all in one place. So now my kids can actually walk by and see what's happening for the day. My oldest knows when track practice is, my middle child knows when homework is due, and my youngest even checks her routines in the morning. And the reason why Skylight is so good is because families are better when they're working together. And guess what? Right now, Skylight is offering my listeners $30 off their 15-inch calendars by going to myskylight.com/MMP. Visit myskylight.com/MMP today for $30 off your 15-inch calendar. That is myskylight.com/MMP.
If you're a QuickBooks customer looking to grow without the growing pains, you need the Intuit ERP, the AI native ERP that upgrades right from QuickBooks. Learn more at intuit.com/ERP.
When Julia failed to return home that night, her fiancé, John DeSantis III, contacted the Waterbury Police Department. At about 1 a.m. on Sunday, December 17th, officers took a missing persons report. John explained that Julia had planned to shop at Lerner's in Recordtown before returning home by 10:30 p.m. During the 5 years that they had been together, she had never been even an hour late without calling. He also provided a description of her vehicle and her clothing. She was wearing a red winter jacket, denim jeans, and tennis shoes. During their search for Julia, the Waterbury police located a witness. It was a friend of Julia's. This friend said that they had seen her at the mall at around 7:30 p.m. on Saturday evening. But no one had seen her since, and her car, a two-door gray 1983 Oldsmobile, was also missing. As investigators searched for Julia, Bonita Casertano and Susan Romello contacted police after recognizing similarities between Julia's disappearance and their own encounters at the Bradley's shopping center. Both women described discovering mysteriously deflated tires before being approached by a man in his late 20s, and this man was offering to help. The two women were able to provide a description of this man. Now, in the nearby town of Naugatuck, where the mall was located, police had been investigating a sexual assault that had taken place on December 13th. At the same time, the Connecticut State Police, they were investigating another sexual assault, but it wasn't just a sexual assault. It was a sexual assault, a robbery, and a burglary, and that took place in the town of Oxford on December 15th. Waterbury, Naugatuck, and Oxford are neighboring communities only about 10 to 15 minutes apart, making investigators wonder whether the cases could somehow be connected. The crazy thing is that for the December 13th and 15th rapes, investigators already had a prime suspect. His name was Sedrick Cobb, and he was 27 years old. Cobb was a suspect because in June of 1989, 6 months before Julia's disappearance and the December attacks in Naugatuck and Oxford, Cobb was facing charges for an incident that involved an attempted sexual assault, and unlawful restraint that took place in Naugatuck. Julia's disappearance, combined with information from the two women who were approached by a strange man fitting Cobb's description, lit a fire under the detectives' rears who were investigating the December 13th and 15th incidents. So, on Wednesday, December 20th, Connecticut State Police and Naugatuck Police executed a search warrant on Sedrick Cobb's car in connection with the two earlier December sexual assaults. The search warrant authorized the police to search for and gather evidence in the case against him related to those crimes. Now, during the search of the car, they found, among other things, a Lerner's shopping bag containing a woman's red belt and a pair of earrings with the price tags still attached. They also discovered a Recordtown shopping bag containing a cassette tape titled Relaxation, and they also located a valve stem cap from a tire. Together, the city and state police arrested Sedrick Cobb at his apartment on December 20th for the sexual assault, robbery, and burglary that took place in Oxford. An officer from the Naugatuck Police Department accompanied the state police when the arrest was made. After his arrest, Cobb repeatedly waived his Miranda rights and agreed to speak with investigators about both the Oxford and Naugatuck attacks. Throughout the interviews, officers described Cobb as calm and cooperative. The following day, on December 21st, the state police shared the information about the Oxford crime with a detective named Robert Scannell, and this guy was from Watertown who was working with the Waterbury Police Department investigating Julia Ashe's disappearance. When the detective learned that the search warrant had turned up items from the Naugatuck Mall where Julia had planned to shop that night that she went missing, they were like, hey, can you ask Cobb if he had been at the mall on December 16th? They asked him, and he said he had. That very day, Cobb faced a judge at around noon where he was arraigned and his bond was set at $500,000. An hour after his arraignment, Cobb came face to face with two Waterbury detectives. They asked Cobb if he knew a woman named Julia Ashe. He said he did not. They then asked him about his visit to the mall on the 16th. Cobb said he had been shopping at Caldor's department store across the street from the Naugatuck Mall, but when he went back to his car wouldn't start. He then walked across the street to the mall, and while crossing the parking lot, he found a Lerner shopping bag with a pair of earrings and a cassette tape inside along with a receipt. He put the receipt in his pocket and returned to his car and put the shopping bags inside. The car still wouldn't start, and Cobb claimed that he blacked out for several hours before waking up at around 2 a.m., and his car miraculously started right up. When he got home, he put the receipt in a box next to his bed. Cobb was like, hey, if you guys want, you guys can go over to my apartment to get the receipt, but told them that they would have to wait for his roommate to get home at around 5:30 p.m. Detective O'Leary and Lieutenant Dealey didn't have a consent form with them, so they drove back to their office, got one, and went back to get a signature from Cobb because they wanted to obtain consent to search his apartment. Now, I'm telling you, these cops were as thorough as they could be. They advised him that he had a right not to have his apartment searched without a warrant, but Cobb told them that he knew his rights, saying, the judge just read them to me. He then signed the consent acknowledging that he had been advised and that he understood that they were searching without a warrant. When the detectives arrived at Cobb's apartment, they found the box next to his bed that Cobb had described. They looked in it expecting to find the receipt from Lerner's, but instead, they found something Cobb had never mentioned. They found a Watertown Credit Union envelope. Recognizing its potential significance, they immediately stopped searching and contacted the state's attorneys for guidance. Rather than seize the envelope under Cobb's consent alone, investigators obtained a search warrant before collecting it and any additional evidence. Once they secured the search warrant, the detectives continued the search. They collected the credit union envelope as well as some other receipts from Kmart. They also found a newspaper hidden beneath Cobb's bed covers. The paper was opened to an article about Julia Ashe's disappearance.
Need a laptop that's built to perform and designed to last all day? Select Windows 11 PCs starting at $499.99 are now at Best Buy. Learn more at bestbuy.com. Best Buy. Imagine that.
I wrote a little song to remind you, Choice Hotels get you more of the experiences you value. The Cambria Hotel's got it all. A rooftop bar, have a ball. Bring a date, your squad, or even your mom. Book direct at choicehotels.com.
On Christmas Day, 9 days after Julia Ashe went missing, a group of teenagers, including a set of twin brothers, were at City Mills Pond looking for a homeless man that they wanted to invite over for Christmas dinner. As they walked near the now frozen pond, they noticed a pair of feet sticking out of the ice and immediately ran to call the police. Authorities arrived and made a positive identification. The body in the pond was Julia Ashe. She was missing one of her tennis shoes and was wearing the red jacket and jeans that her fiancé John had described in his missing persons report. Her jeans were torn at the knees and there was mud ground into the fabric of her clothes where she had tried to climb out. Just above the embankment, they located Julia's missing car. The car had 3 normal tires and a donut. A full-size tire was found in the trunk, missing its valve stem cover. Julia's purse was inside the car on the floorboard on the passenger side, but her wallet was MIA. Crime scene specialists used a firefighter's axe to chop through the ice before recovering Julia's body. After the recovery, Julia's fiancé John was asked to identify her remains. An autopsy performed the following day determined that Julia had died from strangulation and suffocation. The manner of death was ruled homicide. Evidence of sexual assault was also documented, and investigators recovered semen for forensic testing. The glove that had been put in her mouth was shoved between her teeth, and her mouth and head were wrapped several times with the duct tape, leaving her nose partially uncovered. There were clear marks that Julia had tried to pull the gag from her mouth, and they could tell this because she had these deep scratch marks that were around her mouth. Julia's body bore numerous bruises on her shins and knees, accompanied by scrapes. She also had bruises on her face, on the front and side of her head, Her wrists and her arms, and her nose was bloody. Julia had no injuries to her back or the backs of her legs, indicating she landed face first after being pushed over the dam. The medical examiner concluded that the injuries were sustained while she was still alive. On December 26, Waterbury detectives obtained another warrant to search Cobb's car. There, they seized 2 more valve cap covers and a valve stem remover. A second warrant for Cobb's apartment yielded Julia Ashe's wallet, her driver's license, credit cards, and some personal papers, including her Social Security card, and 2 receipts dated in early December. John, her fiancé, identified the Kmart receipts as purchases that Julia had made earlier that month. He also recognized that relaxation cassette tape as a Christmas gift that Julia had purchased for him. The following day, December 27th, crime scene investigators combed the scene at the pond while divers searched in the water. At the base of the dam, they located wire mesh that had pieces of duct tape on it, and pieces of tape trailed from the dam to where Julia's body was located in the shallower water on the apron. The divers also located Julia's missing tennis shoe about 20 to 30 feet from where Julia's body was found. Her shoe was found encased in ice at the bottom of the dam. Now, as I'm saying all of this, the evidence painted a heartbreaking picture. Based on the physical evidence, investigators concluded that Julia had freed herself and nearly escaped. She climbed out of the freezing water and began scrambling up the embankment before Cobb forced her back down into the water where he killed her. On the same day that Julia's body was found, Waterbury Detective Neil O'Leary and Lieutenant Dealey interviewed Cobb. They properly Mirandized him, and he waived his rights, saying, quote, "I want to get this off my chest," end quote. For the next 30 minutes, Cobb confessed. Cobb admitted letting the air out of Julia's tire before offering to help her. He confessed to kidnapping her, sexually assaulting her, binding her with duct tape, and pushing her from the dam because she had seen his face. And because of this, because she had seen his face, she had to die, he told detectives. He conveniently left out the part about watching Julia attempt to save herself and then going back down to strangle her. Instead, he confessed that after pushing her into the dam, he looked down and she wasn't moving. So, because she wasn't moving, he knew she was dead. At that point, he remembered seeing the shopping bag in the back of Julia's car and went back to retrieve it. Then he returned to his car and drove back to the pond to check on Julia. Once he confirmed from afar that she wasn't moving, he went home. The next morning, he took the jeans that were in one of the shopping bags back to the store in the mall, where he returned them for cash. After the confession, detectives prepared a written statement for Cobb to sign. But before they could get his signature, 2 public defenders entered the interview room. After learning that Cobb was being questioned, they ended the interview immediately.
Adobe Firefly is the all-in-one creative studio with AI-powered image and video editing for today's creative process. Built for creators of every kind, Firefly helps you generate, edit, and experiment fast. Because the asks aren't getting smaller, the budgets aren't getting bigger, and the timelines, oh yeah, still tight. With all the best creative AI models in one place, Firefly brings your ideas to life. Unlock a better way to make with Adobe Firefly.
The following day, December 28th, prosecutors announced that they intended to seek a capital murder charge against Sedrick Cobb for the murder of Julia Ashe. That charge was added to the growing list of offenses he was already facing. At the time Julia was abducted and murdered, Cobb was already out on a $5,000 bond awaiting trial for an attempted sexual assault that allegedly occurred in Naugatuck 6 months earlier. While he was free on bond, investigators allege that he committed the December 13th sexual assault in Naugatuck, the December 15th home invasion and sexual assault in Oxford, and just 1 day later, the abduction, sexual assault, and murder of Julia Ashe. Investigators also learned that they had another witness that had seen Cobb in the Bradley's parking lot on December 15th, letting the air out of women's tires before offering to help her change it. That woman was Bonita Casertano. The Oxford attack was especially disturbing. According to prosecutors, after breaking into the victim's house, Cobb robbed and sexually assaulted her while her 5-year-old child was inside the house. During the assault, the man pressed a handgun against the victim's head and pulled the trigger twice. The gun never fired. On December 29th, Cobb appeared in Superior Court wearing leg shackles. The judge formally charged him with capital felony murder in Julia Ashe's death and set an additional $1 million bond, bringing his total bond to $1.5 million. By the end of December 1989, investigators believed they had solved Julia Ashe's murder. Cobb had confessed. Julia's belongings had been recovered from her apartment and vehicle. The physical evidence supported investigators' reconstruction of the crime, and prosecutors were preparing to seek the ultimate punishment under Connecticut law. But a confession was only the beginning. Over the next several years, Cobb's attorneys would challenge nearly every aspect of this investigation, from the searches and seizures to his confession, in an effort to save him from the death penalty. Next time on Military Murder, we follow the case into the courtroom, examine the evidence that prosecutors presented, the defenses Cobb's attorneys raised, and discuss how one of Connecticut's most notorious murder cases ultimately came to its conclusion. True Crime Army, thank you so much for listening today. Be sure to join me next time where I will bring you the conclusion of this case. Shout out to my girl Myrtle for researching and writing this episode. My sources for this episode include various appellate documents, articles in the Hartford Courant, the Record Journal, the Connecticut Post, the Burlington Free Press, Connecticut State Department of Corrections website, and Ancestry.com. Military Murder is a Mama Margot production. The music was created by Ty-Ops. Until next time, remember, you never really know what someone is capable of, so remain vigilant always. You have a fabulous week, and I'll keep digging to bring you the conclusion of this case next time.
Mama's working on her podcast.
I don't want to.
Hey, it's Ryan Reynolds here from Mint Mobile. Now, I was looking for fun ways to tell you that Mint's offer of unlimited premium wireless for $15 a month is back. So I thought it would be fun if we made $15 bills. But it turns out that's very illegal. So there goes my big idea for the commercial. Give it a try at mintmobile.com/switch.
Upfront payment of $45 for 3 months, $90 for 6 months, or $180 for 12-month plan required. $15 per month equivalent. Taxes and fees extra. Initial plan term only. Greater than 50 gigabytes may slow when network is busy. See terms.
Best thing that's ever happened to you financially. Go.
Easy. Sold my car on Carvana. Amazing offer.
Really? I hit 200 on the scratcher.
Did the scratcher come to your house and hand you a check?
No.
How many scratchers did you hit to get that? I hit a button on Carvana.com once.
Okay, that's fair.
It's like the lottery, except you always win.
Not like the lottery at all, actually.
Exactly. Inexplicably good. Offers worth bragging about. Sell your car today on Carvana. Pickup fees may apply.